What is the deal, beautiful people? My name is Ramon. Welcome to the channel. And around here, we talk about every and anything photography. Today's topic, the camera industry and Android.
1, 2, get down.
I know a lot of my close friends are tired of this conversation. I've been beating it to death. So I'm going to be in the market for a new camera soon. You know, my Sony a7 II, which is a workhorse, is starting to show its age. And there's some nuances about that camera that's very annoying for me, particularly the focusing system in low light. I got to work harder than I should be working, quite honestly. And a lot of these newer cameras, the autofocusing is amazing. And I want a piece of that. You know what I mean? I want a piece of that. But as the realization comes that I'm going to be spending $2,500, $3,000, $3,500 on a new camera, it brings me to this point of, every year I'm seeing the leaps and bounds that Apple and Android are doing in the smartphone world. And I can't ignore the feeling that, like, are these cameras even worth the money? You know what I mean? And it's a silly question I ask myself, because yes, they're worth the money because it's a professional tool that I use to run my business. Yes, I get that. But like, there are things that the smartphones are doing with a 32nd, a fraction of the hardware, and damn near 90% of the results, right? Like, computational photography is no joke. And I can't help but look at these camera manufacturers like, what are you guys doing? Like, it feels like they're just blatantly asleep at the wheel, right? So one of my first points here is, let's not talk iOS, because iOS, and I'll get into that a little later in the video, iOS is locked to Apple, but let's say for shits and giggles, Android is what we're using going forward. Like, I don't understand why these camera manufacturers will not put Android on their cameras. Like, it's made for this. There's literally, there's no downside to this. There's so many upsides, and I guess I know the answer, right? Like, we'll get there shortly. But one of the main drivers, I think that Android deserves a chance on a camera, and we didn't really see it come to fruition. I think it was Samsung that had, that Android first device, and it was very well received. But we didn't really see the dream on a lot of the points I'm about to outline. But nonetheless, I think in today's world, looking at what computational photography does, with a sensor size this big, it's just mind numbing. Like, I can only imagine what it'll do with a micro four thirds, right? And then, like, a full frame. Can you imagine? Right? Let your imagination free here. When you hit that button on your brand new Sony a7 Mark V R5, whatever, with 50 something megapixels, the camera processes 10 to 15 images, and then that raw data gets merged into giving you whatever output you so desire. Would you like to change the depth of field in post? So be it. Consider it done. Would you like to create a high dynamic range or HDR image from this subset of images? So be it. Done. Would you like to enhance the depth of field that you have, right? So maybe you shot at 5.6, but now you would like to simulate 1.2. So be it. It's like, I can't imagine how that would change the game from a professional level, right? Like, there's so much There's so much to be had there. And then, like, again, computational photography, you've got the raw data and the depth mapping. Maybe when I import the image in Lightroom, it already knows what layer is the skin, what layer is the tone of the skin, what layer is the hair, where's the eyes and the iris, and then all these things are automatically a separate subset of data that you can target and edit on its own within the same image. Why in God's name would we not want that? You get what I'm saying? And it's crazy because today all of these things can be done with a middle of the road Android phone. So you figure something with the hardware internals for $600, which means the company's probably paying $200 or $300 for everything. Why can't you put that in my camera? You know what I mean? Like, this is nuts. You're talking about frames per second and how quick to shutter. Like, all of these things have been solved by computational photography for years now. It's almost embarrassing that it doesn't exist. So I alluded to why the camera manufacturers would not do this. This next point is very consumer heavy, right? So we all know, I don't know, let me not say it that way. There's a few of us here that buy cameras to last. And there's a few of us, I love Joe Edelman's phrase, geartographer. I'm somewhere in the middle. Who doesn't like buying new shit? But wouldn't it be nice if your device had Android on it? And over time, Sony, Panasonic, Olympus, Canon, they're able to issue updates to continuously improve the capabilities of the camera, right? Like, wouldn't that be an amazing thing? And the reason I think this is so strong is because year over year, or every 2 years over every 2 years, we get this all new revision, mark whatever of these cameras, and they're quite largely the same. You know, just little software tweaks here and there. Like, you know, I don't need you guys to push the limits of the hardware, because oftentimes when they're pushing the limits of the hardware and the sensors, they're introducing new problems. Like, listen, it's okay for me if you sell the same 50 megapixel camera for the next 5 years, but every year you continue to improve it. And not only that, the promise of Android is, and we've seen this like the XDA developer community, you buy a piece of hardware and the developers are sitting on their ass, not moving as fast as they should, or they're doing scumbag shit like locking unlimited recording behind a stupid setting in the firmware. It would be nice to just have access to the raw internals of your camera and be able to tweak that in Android and just unlock the capability. You know, you get this camera that doesn't have peaking enabled. Well, you know, here's this Android tweak that you can change that'll now enable peaking, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's all these wonderful things that can be had from the world of Android and tweaking that I think would decelerate the death of cameras, because let's be honest here, the numbers are looking grim, and I feel like them modernizing the cameras in such way as this would really slow that down and make cameras a more desirable thing again. Here's another one for you. What if there was only this one camera? What if Canon just said, we're making this, the 5R, that's it, and it's got Android. And every year, you know, it's sort of I'm going to say a dirty word here, a subscription model where, you know, they come out with a subset of new features and tweaks and improvements every year, and they charge you, I don't know, because they got to make money too, right? So if they were charging you, let's say $3,000 for the camera, and your dumbass was buying it every 2 years, well, maybe it's okay if you charge me $300 for the fall 2023 update refresh with all the new features. Like, I'm okay with that. And if I don't like what you're selling, then I just won't upgrade this one. I'll wait till the next one, right? Like, I think that's a very healthy model. I think the consumer wins in that model. However, admittedly, I don't think that these camera manufacturers see themselves winning in that model. And again, that's my argument here. You know, none of this is up to you. It doesn't matter what Canon or Sony does when in terms of cameras, shit's just dying because there's something called a smartphone and it is eating everyone's lunch. It makes it much more accessible. The technology is through the roof in terms of what it can do in computational photography. No one wants to deal with a camera anymore, right? So I don't think guarding your secrets is the way. I think finding a way to make it more appealing to more audiences that may not have, in one point or another, owned a camera, making it appealing to them is the way to survive. I don't know. You guys tell me if I'm tripping here. So yeah, this is my question to you. Could you imagine, or would you be okay, or would you buy into a model where you pay $1,200 for the one camera and every year you spend about $150, $200, $300 for the new update, versus today's model where $3,000 and you walk away, right? And every time a new feature gets, which is why I love Fuji, let's put that out there. Every time a new feature gets released with the new camera, I'm just sitting in the back boiling. What the fuck? I can't get that. There's no reason for me not to get that. Let me get that. You know what I mean? And Fuji's very good at that. But even so, I've got the X-T2 and they're up to the X-T4. I think X-T5 is rumored to come out sometime this year. So it's like, I stopped getting updates a while back for my X-T2. But for stuff that, like, okay, I get some of it is tied to the processor, but maybe if you would put a properly beefy processor in there, we wouldn't have these issues, right? Like, I'm happy to pay into a system that benefits me as a consumer to where I don't feel the need to constantly reach out to KEH and say, okay, I want to sell this to get that. How much are you going to give me for my camera now? Oh, I'll give you $50, and they're going to turn around and sell it for $1,200, right? And now I got to front the rest of the money. Like, I don't want to do that juggle anymore. I don't want to do, like, why can't you guys just one camera and then maintain the software? And my argument here is always gonna look at smartphones as the catalyst for this. You mean to tell me that year over year, Apple, Google, Samsung, they figure out how to completely embarrass the camera proper community with a sensor the size of a fingernail every year without fail? Well, why is the camera proper community selling me a new goddamn camera? Like, I don't need it, right? So again, I want to hear from you guys. Would you be okay with a model where you buy one camera with the expectation that every year, every 2 years, there's these huge software updates with these new features, kind of like Windows and Mac OS? What do you think about that? Speaking of, like the video if you like it. If you're new here, browse through the channel, look at some of the other videos I've done. Give me 2 or 3 videos. And if you like those, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you as a mainstay. So my last point around this subject is pure speculation. This is me letting my imagination run wild. I think the camera industry needs to do something. By something, I mean get Android in there and get this find a way to merge computational photography and in an accessible way. I would prefer Android before Apple gets over here, because I got a very strange feeling that Apple is going to show up and fuck the entire industry up, and not in a bad way, right? So if you look at, let's think about the iPod, right? The iPod was a purpose first device, music, that was it. And later the old ones was kind of like this strange music video player that still ran apps, and all that's fine. You know, I could totally see a world where Apple says, now introducing the iCamera. And everyone loses their shit, right? Now, in that conversation, I had a lot of thought behind this. In that conversation, right, we tell ourselves smartphones will never replace real cameras. Well, why is that? As far as I'm concerned, the only real answer to that is lenses, interchangeable lenses. And if I hold up my phone right now, right, there's nothing stopping Apple from saying, you see this square right here? They're gonna remove this trio of lenses, and behind it is gonna be a sensor that's gonna be the biggest sensor any smartphone has ever seen, right? And roughly, let's say it's the size of Micro Four Thirds or half that size, whatever. And there's gonna be a slot here, just like a cap cover. That's it. And then Apple's gonna sell a 24 millimeter lens that you just slide this out and slide that lens in there like a moment type deal. And they're gonna have a 50 and an 85 and a telephoto, and it's gonna have the M whatever the fuck processor Apple's up to, and these interchangeable lenses. Sony, Apple, they're all Sony, Canon, Nikon, Olympus, you're fucked. That's it, you're done, right? And I don't really see a reason why Apple shouldn't go for this. They probably don't give a shit, because honestly, the way their cameras are performing now, it's just godsend. It's a god tier. I mean, not proud to admit it, but I've been places with my camera in my hand and I'm still taking out the phone because I don't feel like dealing with bullshit, right? So there's that. But like, I totally see a world where Apple is gonna show up and just dominate, and then we're all gonna be under the covers bitching and moaning, Apple this, Apple that. Meanwhile, Sony, Canon, Nikon, they all had their chance to get it right for literally decades at this point. I don't know. I tried my best not to turn this topic into a bitch fest, but I got a lot of heat for this topic, and I'm very disappointed in how the camera industry as a whole is lagging their feet on computational photography and how they're approaching supporting a long-term products. It's not a cool thing. And I feel like as a professional, I'm not too worried, but as a creative, I am. Like, when I'm ready to create, I still prefer to hold a camera. And I feel like a lot of that is just disappearing these days and very fast. And it kind of sucks to see it, right? Not to mention there's hundreds of thousands of people that's employed by the camera industry. Like, guys, get it together. Get it together. My name is Ramon. I'm out of here. Peace.